Welcome to the Fleet Safety Geeks podcast, where we discuss the latest industry trends, best practices, and strategies for keeping your fleet and its drivers safe on the road. Whether you're a fleet manager, safety professional, or a driver yourself, our goal is to provide valuable insights and actionable tips to help you prevent accidents, protect lives, and promote a culture of safety within your organization. From vehicle maintenance and driver training to regulations and technology, we cover it all. Tune in every week as we explore the challenges and opportunities of fleet safety in today's fast-paced, ever-changing world. Welcome back to another episode of Fleet Safety Geeks. I'm here with Phil Mosier. Phil, how are you doing?
Good, Bob. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. We don't have any sports to talk about except for March Madness. And I watched no basketball this year, so I didn't even put in a bracket.
Well, 14 days until spring or until regular season MLB starts. So I'm looking forward to that. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. We're in a countdown.
Nice. All right. What do we got today? We're going to talk about, I know we're going to talk about some sort of safety related to vehicles. You have a topic in mind?
I do. And it's going to be one that people may think, well, why do we need to cover this? Absolutely needs to be covered. And it's seatbelt use, restraints, and safety inside the vehicle. So I think it's important that we cover it. And we have touched upon this here and there, but I think that we need to dedicate at least one podcast specifically to that.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. I know you have some statistics that we've kind of reviewed, but I just want to say that, seatbelts and restraining people is extremely important because it's interesting to me because for our safe driving program where I work, the minute the vehicle is 1 mile in motion and that seatbelt's not attached, you get a bad score for that. And that's 20% of your score because the seatbelt helps restrain you and keep you safe in the event of an accident. And we're going to talk about low speed accidents.
Absolutely. So yeah, I do have some statistics, and I have drum roll, please. The U.S., and this is from 2020. So I was looking for stats for 2021. I couldn't find anything, but for 2020, we reached and the way they do this, they actually go out and do studies and watch people and observe people, and they do observations, and they look at crash information. But we reached a 90.4% seatbelt use here in the U.S., which is that's the highest it's ever been, which it's really excellent. Now, that being said, that still means that 8.6% of people aren't buckling up. And what's startling about that, Bob, in that same year then, 51% of the people were killed from crashes on our highways. 51% of those weren't restrained. Yet only 8.6 of them weren't restrained. 51% of the people who died were not restrained. And doesn't that tell you just how effective these things are? And I'll be honest, Bob, total confession here. When I was young, I didn't buckle up, because my parents didn't buckle up.
Mm-hmm.
Man, did I change. And guess what? I actually had my parents buckling up. My parents are gone now. I actually have I love telling this story. My grandmother, who drove until she was 92, and she was an outstanding driver. She really was.
Good for her.
I got her to start buckling up. One day I was at home. I heard this horn blowing, and I look out, and it's my grandmother in my driveway. And I came out. I said, "What's wrong? What's going on?" She said, "You made me wear this damn thing. Now help me get out of it." Here, what she had done is when she buckled up, she buckled into the center seatbelt attachment, right? So the button was on the inside, and she couldn't figure it out, right? So I said, Nana Moser. She was cool. I said, "You buckled into the wrong thing." She said, "Oh, this stupid thing." I said, "You always tell me I have to wear this." I said, "You don't stop wearing this." She goes, "I'll wear it." And so I showed her what happened and everything. And I like to think, maybe I'm being naive, but she continued to wear it. But just the point I'm making with this story is that I don't care how old you are, you can learn, right? And I started buckling up when I became a cop. And then I started seeing what happens to people who don't buckle up. And I started wearing the thing pretty quick. So it's pretty important. And I have some other statistics here if you want me to bore people with some stats. But some of this
let's talk about When did seatbelts become mandatory in vehicles?
Mandatory in vehicles, I think, was actually not mandatory. What was it? Lap belts in the 60s? I'm not sure. I should have researched that, but that's an interesting question. I'm not quite sure. But if you remember, it used to just be lap belts. I mean, I had a 66 Mustang and it was just a lap belt.
Right.
And I remember the first time my parents got a car where it would buzz if you didn't buckle. You know what my dad did? He buckled them together and stuffed them under the seats. But but then later on in life, man, he was wearing the thing, which just again goes to show you that you can learn. There was
I just remembered I had like a 1960s Super Beetle or something like that I was working on. It didn't come with seatbelts, and I was like, "Where are the seatbelts in this thing?" It just wasn't required. Right. So I know some of the statistics you're going to talk about are since 1960,
right?
And that's going to be important. I think that's because maybe seatbelts became more, just like anti-lock brakes and some of the,
right.
The rear view, the reversing camera, just become standard under, federal guidelines in the country. So it was probably sometime in the 60s, and that's why the statistics are going to talk about.
I actually came across a statistic from NHTSA, which I thought was National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, that I thought was rather interesting, and it brings up the year 1960. Between 1960 and 2012, it is estimated that seatbelts have saved 329,715 lives. So almost 330,000 lives saved from seatbelts. Now, again, I don't know how they, can come up with those statistics. I'm sure they have a method, and they test that. But just think about that: 330,000 people didn't lose their lives because they were buckled. So I think, again, I don't think anybody can argue that these things don't work. They work. And listen, I've heard people, I've done trainings and I've been to places, talking crash scenes and such, where people will say, well, my neighbor's third cousin's son's dog would have been killed if they'd been belted. It's like, they got thrown clear of the wreck and things like that. That, I'm going to call bullshit on that. Okay. I mean, that's, I've seen a lot of ejection crashes over the years, and only one time did I see somebody who was ejected that actually survived the crash. And that was actually a 12-year-old kid. Again, I'm going to get into my stories here. So it was a 2-seater sports car. I got the exact average speed just prior to crash at 63 miles per hour. It was a 35 zone in a curve with a suggested speed sign of 25 miles per hour for that curve. So he was going way too fast. Lost control. He had his 12-year-old son sitting on the console, the middle of the car, with his son's friend, who was also 12 years old. That kid buckled up. He was in the passenger seat. When the crash happened, the vehicle flipped, and according to a witness who was driving behind the crashed vehicle, said he actually saw the kid fly up through the sunroof. The vehicle went by, and then he came down on the road and landed actually on his feet, but then crumpled to the ground. The kid was seriously injured and was in the hospital for some time, but he survived. And that's the only one I've ever had that an ejection, that person who was ejected actually survived. Side note on this: the guys who was driving was a 0.29 blood alcohol, and I charged him with the DWI and all that. But then I also charged him with recklessly endangering the welfare of children, 2 counts. I got a conviction on him. This guy actually sued the fire department and the rescue team, saying they injured him, getting him cut out of the car. These people saved his life, and then he filed suit against them. But what he didn't know was that the fire department recorded all of their rescues. They recorded it, and they had it recorded, and the lawsuit was thrown out. But it just shows you how despicable some people can be. You ever wonder why, Bob, I have an attitude? There's one of them. Okay, so
no kidding.
But that's the only one. I don't mean to get into down the weeds here with my stories, but I thought that was interesting. Most of the time when people are ejected, Bob, a lot of times they're killed on the way out. Sometimes their bodies actually fold together and they smash out. And I'm well, I will be graphic, head, like scalp and things like that on the, on the windows, like the door frames and things on the way out.
Yeah.
A lot of times they die on the way out. And then sometimes people who are ejected, when they get thrown out, their body's not restrained. And sometimes they actually, if the car's still touching the ground, they're actually traveling faster than the vehicle that they just left. And then the vehicle catches up to them and they get killed by their own vehicle. They get run over by their own vehicle.
Right.
So these are real. And anytime I ever see where somebody was an ejection crash, I say, well, they weren't belted. And that's just the truth. So it's so important to buckle up.
Yeah, absolutely. It just proves right there. I mean, just if you get ejected from the vehicle, you're probably going to die.
You're going to die. Right.
If you're restrained within the vehicle with a seatbelt, your chances are much better.
Right. And so I always say, and I know we've talked, so what's the first thing you do when you get into your car?
I put my seatbelt on before I even start it.
Right. You put the seatbelt on. I always say lock the door too, because a door that's locked is far less likely to pop open during a crash, and you want that door closed, so that you can get the crumple zones working, and also so your limbs don't fly out, your arms and such fly out during a crash. So you want your door. So lock the door, buckle up every time, make that your habit. And you shouldn't even have to think about it. And my kids, I always buckled up. Right. And I called them the rats. They would rat people out that didn't buckle up. Dad, they're not buckled. It's like, thank you. And it's the driver's responsibility to make sure everybody is buckled up. Right.
That's right. That's why I told my daughter was learning to drive. Yep.
Exactly. So you just have to, just take a look around. Everybody buckled. I mean, I say that all the time, and and they do. People know, they buckle up. So I mean, we're better than we've ever been, but we can still improve. So I have some more stats here if you want me to run these by.
Statistics are always fun. It
cool.
Keeps people's attention. Very good.
Okay, so the U.S. Department of Transportation study showed that 92.4% of the people driving on highways on faster roads with faster speeds buckled up, 92.4%. But when in medium, like surface roads with medium speed limits, only 89% of them buckled up. And then when you get on the slower roads, only 86.5% of people buckled up. So people think, well, if I'm going slower, I won't get hurt. Yeah, you can, okay? Again, I'll use one of my stories, and sorry if I'm boring people, but I investigated a crash where a lady hit a tree no thicker than my arm. I mean, it was just a small tree. She went off the road, hit the tree. But she did not have airbags. She flew forward, and she hit the center portion of the steering wheel. I actually took a picture of it. You could see the fabric imprint from her blouse on the steering wheel, like in the center portion of the steering wheel. You could see it, and it was right on the one corner, the bottom right corner. Bob, it ruptured her aorta, and she died. And I got the exact speed at the time of the crash was 13 miles per hour. I could prove it. It was 13 miles per hour. So if people think, well, if I'm on a slower road, I don't have to buckle up. Trust me, you do. Here's what you do. Put your hands in your pocket and run as fast as you can into a wall. Unrestrained into the wall. Put your hands in your pocket. Run as fast as you can. Are you going to get hurt?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so, right? Unrestrained hit into a wall? Yeah, you're going to get hurt. Well, how fast are you running? I'm getting old now, Bob. I can't get up there anymore very fast anymore. But let's say you're going 5 to 10 miles per hour. That's a 5 to 10 mile per hour hit. Hit something in your vehicle at 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. Get thrown out of the vehicle. Hit the road at 40. See what I'm saying with this? It's like, just because you're on a slower road doesn't mean you don't buckle up. You buckle up every time. And that should be again, it should be your habit, period. Done. Right?
Right.
I have some more. So the areas of the country that have the best stats. Okay. The Northeast seatbelt use rate, they estimate at 88.7%. That's where I live. We are knuckleheads here. In the Northwest, we're up to 89.2. In the South, 89.7. And in the West, they have the best 93.8% use. This correlates with many of the states who have mandatory primary offense seatbelt laws. There's still one state that does not have seatbelt, does not require seatbelt use, and that's New Hampshire. When you drive into that state, that you'll see the sign that says, "We suggest that you buckle up." You drive into Pennsylvania, although it's not a primary offense, it's still a secondary offense. You have to be stopped for something else to get a ticket. But the places that have the primary offenses, they have the best seatbelt use. So the laws are working. But in New Hampshire, you don't. So I always say their motto is live free or die, and they sure do. You know, I mean, come on, man. How can you? It's my right to decide whether I want to wear a seatbelt. Okay, yeah, all right, you go ahead. But it's really stupid, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
So, let's see.
What area of the country has the best seatbelt use?
It's West. The West has 93.8%.
Oh, okay, I missed that.
So the West Coast actually has the best, has the best seatbelt use, 93.8%.
Did you say that they have their laws are stronger there?
Yeah. So California's primary offense. So if they can stop you for just not wearing the seatbelt. Now listen, vehicle codes are about that thick. If a cop wants to find a reason to stop you, they'll stop you. Okay. We won't get into that. That's another whole topic. But the point I make is that if people know that they can be stopped and get a ticket for not wearing their seatbelts, don't tell me that's not an incentive to wear the belt. I think it definitely is. So I think that it should be primary offense every state, and it should be enforced.
Yeah, no, I agree. And when I was younger, I didn't wear a seatbelt because I was young and stupid and invincible. Then I started wearing it because it became a law, and I was worried I'd get pulled over. Now I just wear it because it just makes sense, because it's the safe thing to do, and I don't want to die. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah, I remember actually when I started dating my wife, my father-in-law was a big seatbelt advocate, and I really wasn't wearing it all that much then at that point. I was just a rookie cop, and I hadn't been to many crashes at that point, but then I started going to crashes, and I started thinking, ooh, maybe I didn't know he would be my future father-in-law. Maybe he has something on the ball here. And by the way, his name was Robert, Bob. He went by Robert, and I said, maybe he has something here. And then I remember saying to me once, you want to ride, my daughter is riding with you, you got to buckle up. So I respected that. And I thought that was really wise of him, because I'll tell you, Bob, I've seen people kill people in car crashes. Can you imagine hitting somebody, hitting heads with somebody at, 35, 40, 45, 50, 60, 65? I mean, it will severely injure and kill. People kill people. Anything loose in a vehicle becomes a flying projectile. So that's another point, is that never have anything loose in a vehicle, including passengers. Best place for your stuff is if you have a trunk, put it in the trunk. If you don't have a trunk, then as far to the back and low to the floor as possible. If you do have to put something on your seat, throw a seatbelt around it. You don't want anything unrestrained in that vehicle. And that definitely includes people.
Yeah.
And then let's get into kiddos.
Yes.
Okay.
Car seats, right?
Car seats. Make sure the kids are in the proper car seats. And what I suggest is, there are police, ambulance, fire crews, hospitals. They have people who are trained in the proper seats for the kids, the proper, booster seats or car seats that are proper for the age, weight, and height of the child. I hesitate to tell you what those are because I don't know your kid. So again, I would suggest do some research, make sure that your child's in the proper seat, and also make sure that seat is properly installed. You see instances where kids are in the car seats, but then the seat actually comes loose during a crash. So the seat itself needs to be properly installed. Contact your local PD, contact your ambulance squads, whatever. Find out where there are car seat installation technicians who know how to properly install these things. They will help you, and they want to help you. They would much rather have you come there every week and say, hey, can you help me out with this? rather than going to a crash scene where there's a kid who's been killed or injured.
That's
So,
right.
yeah. So in 2020, 607 children under 12 died, and 63,000 were injured, and almost 50% of those kids killed were not buckled. So, again, how many could have been saved had they been buckled? And that, to me, again, it seems like a no-brainer, but man, it's crazy. Here's one also that I always want to bring up. Two more things I'll bring up. If you have a passenger and they put their feet up and the airbag is there, don't allow them to do that, because their legs and their feet are, they're going to be bending in ways they don't want them to bend. So never, ever, ever, ever allow a passenger to have their feet up on the dash while the vehicle's in motion, or while you're driving, period. Then also, as far as airbags, a lot of people get injured, arm injuries and hand injuries, because they have their hands misproperly placed on the steering wheel. Your best hand position when driving is a 9 and 3. You always heard 10 and 2, that's up around here, but drop it down to 9 and 3, because that gives the airbag room to deploy, and it also gives you the most steering ability in your vehicle. Don't lock your thumbs like in, but put your thumbs, like hang your thumbs over that center post, okay, like on the vehicle. That gives you great steering control. I drive like that, Bob, all the time. That's just, again, my habit. I used to be the one-hander guy. It was terrible. I learned real quick, you gotta keep two hands on the wheel. You keep two hands on the wheel, you increase your chances of maintaining wheel control by 50%. I'll take it. So 9 and 3 gives airbag room to deploy, and never hook the wheel. What I mean by hooking is when you're turning, that you reach inside the wheel like this and you turn the wheel. And a lot of people do this when they're turning at intersections where you have a greater chance of having that frontal collision where the airbag's going to deploy. If you're hooking the wheel like this and that airbag deploys, that's going to bend your arm in a way you don't want it to bend. So always keep your hands to the outside of the wheel. A simple way to remember that is don't be a hooker. I know, bad joke, really, really, really bad joke, but it's an easy way to remember it.
Yeah. Yeah. Could you imagine having an airbag hit your arm that was in the wrong place on the steering wheel, or as a passenger,
Nope.
have the airbag hit your foot? You could actually get killed or seriously injured by
feet
having your own
bend up
hand
behind
hit you
your
in the
ears.
face.
Yeah.
Yeah, or your foot getting pushed back so far that it breaks your leg and
Right.
hits you in the head. You
Right.
could actually die from having your own hand or foot,
Yeah.
knee, leg hit you because of
Yep.
these airbags.
Oh,
Yeah.
if you're one-handed also and your airbag deploys, you're going to punch yourself in the nose. I mean, you're going to break your hand, you're going to break your face. I mean, don't do that. 9 and 3 hand position. Don't hook the wheel. Just simple things that people aren't aware of.
Right. Distractions. We talk about distractions all the time. It's always cell phones, right?
Yeah.
You can get distracted by anything: eating, looking at a map. Do we look at maps anymore? But also loose kids in your car,
Yes.
right? If your kids are not secured properly and they're bouncing around, that's going to distract you, increase your opportunity to be involved in an accident, and having everybody injured and kids injured in that crash.
Exactly. I mean, it's such a good point. Kids are a distraction. So, I all I would have to say to my kids was, "Do I need to stop the car?" Because I can get a little loud. And they would
Don't
just,
make me come back
"No,
there.
Dad, you don't need to stop the car." But could you imagine a kid bouncing around the car? Are you really going to be focused on your driving? So now you're risking a crash, a greater risk of a crash, because you're focused on that kid that's bouncing around at a point when that kid's not restrained. I mean, talk about a double danger. That is just so, just plainly say, it's stupid. Bob,
Yeah.
and again, I'm not trying to be on Mr. Macho Cop here or anything, but when I would see people that didn't have their kids restrained, I would stop them. And usually before I even put the lights on, I knew whether I was going to give that person a ticket or not. And it was from the violation that dictated that. With a kid that wasn't restrained, either I gave them the lecture, like I give them the talking to, like you need to slow down or whatever. This is a bad area for collisions, that type of thing. or I would give them a ticket. But with a kid that wasn't restrained, they got the lecture and the ticket.
Yeah.
And I didn't care.
You got to. I mean,
you know, and they say, well, you
can't let
keep
that
the
one
kid,
go.
you tell him to get in the seat, keeps him buckling himself. You know what? I'm not the parent. You're the parent. Be the parent. Buckle up the kid. Make sure, and you need to instill that in them right away. It's like you shouldn't. My kids didn't even question it. As soon as we opened the doors, and I'm not bragging here or being self-righteous, but they would just get right into their car seats. It was just normal. That should be normal from day one. And if it's not normal, make it the normal. So, yeah, you're exactly right, though, man. Could you imagine a kid bouncing around the car like that? And you're going to be focused on your driving.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I know as a kid, I always had backseat middle, and it was always hard to get that seatbelt around because the other kids are sitting on it, and I couldn't get it.
Yeah.
I was always mad. I hated backseat middle.
Yeah. Well, I was the youngest of four. What I used to love to do, and again, show you how things change. You know where I would sit? Where I loved to sit when I was a kid? On the armrest up front. So that I could see over the dashboard.
Nice.
Now, could you imagine my dad would just tap the brakes? I would have been through that windshield.
Your teeth
wow.
are even the 8-track player.
Oh, my God. I think it was even before 8-tracks. The AM radio, maybe. I would have the AM radio knob in my eyeball. I mean, I'm old, Bob.
Yeah, dashes had exterior metal too.
Oh, they did. I remember my dad's Buick, man. I mean, that thing was all metal. It was a great car, though.
Yeah, it's fun to joke about, what we went through, mainly because we're old and we have these memories of, how unsafe we were. But, getting back to being serious, the seatbelt is just the most, one of the safest safety features in a vehicle. And we've got to wear it. Fleet professionals who drive a lot of miles need to make sure that seatbelt is always fastened for their safety. But everybody in the general public, use your seatbelts. Let's get that to 100%.
Absolutely.
Anything under 100%.
Absolutely. The airbags, just because you have airbags don't mean you need to buckle up. They work in conjunction with each other and give you the best chances of not being injured or killed.
Yep. No, that's right. Absolutely. All right, Phil. Any closing thoughts? That was a good
just,
one. Right
America, buckle up. Anywhere, buckle up. Anybody who's watching this, I don't care where you are in the world, please always buckle up. Make sure that everybody in your vehicles buckle up. New loose articles, and don't be a hooker.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, then. Have a great week. Buckle up. Stay safe, and we will talk to you another week.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Take care.